I'm going to go ahead and introduce Connor. I have known Connor now for 4 or 5 years.
Three brands. Oh my.
Three brands. Knew him when he was working with Sunday, also with Caraway, and now with Grunes. And I will say two things, not to like make him blush, but um, genuinely one of the smartest, kindest people in the industry, and very generous. The number of people I talk to who are like, "Oh yeah, Connor like was willing to, give me a couple tidbits or whatever." Incredible. So, in the spirit of that, you are here today.
I
So
echo
thank
the same
you.
about you, Jacques. Thank you.
Oh, this guy. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. The first question I want to ask, just to get everyone going, is like, you've worked at three different brands. You've had different experiences. What would you say to brands that are in these three moments? We talked about it a couple of times. These three moments in their trajectory where they're nervous to get started and they're not really sure what they should do. They have tried it and deemed it a failure and turned it off. Let's talk about those mainly, and then we can also talk about people that are doing well. But as we looked at the room, not many people are in that camp yet. They're kind of in camps 1 and 2. What would you say about your journey so far that would help people to think about where they should start or what they should consider?
I feel like I've heard Brett talk about this a lot too, and another guy that I've had the pleasure of working with for a while. But I think the first thing to get really comfortable with is like everybody's on YouTube. So I think everybody has this expectation of who is or is not on YouTube, and is my brand going to be a good fit for it? I don't have that much of a male-leaning audience, whatever it might be. I think everybody's on YouTube, so that's a really good foundation to set with senior leadership. The other thing that you showed a good example of is like you don't need to go right out the bat with a big production to go get creative that's ready for YouTube. So you showed the split screen UGC and doing some treatments with graphics and things like that. Such an easy way to get started and start to throw some money into YouTube. And the biggest challenge that I've had though is that depending on senior leadership at your companies, there's going to be an expectation of what good performance from a marketing perspective looks like at a channel level.
Real quick, by show of hands, how many of you is that like a big concern? Is like, even if I could walk out of here today and I'm like, oh, I know it can work, having to explain it to somebody else. I just want to see a show of hands. That's half the room. Okay, thank you. Continue, Connor.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like Meta gives you such a quick feedback loop. Search placements, PMAX, everything else that Google's selling has a much quicker feedback loop. So a couple things that I usually do to get started is just make sure that the post-purchase survey is set up to get a really nice baseline of what YouTube responses look like today. You want the counterfactual of a life before you started to spend on YouTube. So that's one of the first places you're going to start to detect some of that activity. Another thing that we have really tried to figure out is like the right events to load into YouTube to try to get reads on the ability to increment. So you don't have to start right off the bat with like a purchase event, right? Like a full conversion. It's a little bit of a extra step required for a user to go from an in-stream ad, click through it. They're on YouTube for a reason to consume content. So we spend a lot of time figuring out like what are the additional signals to feed into YouTube to ensure that we're starting to see some detection of lift across other metrics. So think things like add to cart, even further upstream. So we start to build a really nice baseline of what those benchmarks need to look like and detect, how are we incrementing actions that are not purchases? And then we get some confidence that, this platform is showing really good signs of life for us. So I always start slow with YouTube. It's a couple $1,000 a day, and then you really start to build momentum. And that's where you start to bring in heavy hitters like Jacques and the team at Raindrop to then go really punch out these messages and do them in a much bigger way. So that's been the journey that we had at Sunday. Started with some UGC, some easy cuts, take things, put them out. Same at Caraway, and then same with Grunes, although Grunes went really hard right off the jump with some really big productions with you guys. So yeah, that would be my advice is like figure out your benchmark metrics and like have tempered expectations and have a longer timeline horizon by which you're willing to measure them. I view YouTube as a binary. You either are or are not going to be on YouTube. You can't just dabble. So that's really like the expectation I've tried to set with CEOs and founders that I've worked with. It's like, hey, we're not going to be flexing this thing up and down. We're going to be a YouTube brand or we are not going to be.
Okay. I love that because what you said there is so critical. It's like, if you have the mindset of we're going to figure this out, for the most part, it is solvable. Like there's nothing that, like, I can't say nothing, but people are spending time on YouTube. They're watching ads there, and it's a matter of figuring out. what do you in your journey and a lot of the conversations you have, what are some of the biggest either mistakes or misconceptions people have that you just kind of see a pattern in or you find yourself speaking to a lot?
I think that I don't know when I even would have gathered this as like my expectation of how to run YouTube, but it was like, we're gonna make 3 YouTube ads this quarter and put those into YouTube, and that is going to be what floats the boat for us. And then we'll make 3 more YouTube ads next quarter. So the last couple of years, I've really tried to like break that down. I'm like, why do I think that there's just YouTube ads and they're gonna be a little bit more of this kind of like dormant, low frequency activity? So especially at Groons right now, the mistake we're avoiding is like, we're not going to not attack it like we do Meta. I'm sure many of you guys in here are like intense creative sprints, dissecting every single ad and spending a ton of time working through iterations, innovations, diversity, what's working, why. But I bet YouTube is a little bit more of an afterthought. And maybe that's just me, but that's been my experience up until the past couple of years. Now we're just basically saying, hey, what's preventing us from attacking YouTube with the exact same intensity? Let's make tons of permutations, load in dozens of assets, cut it against tons of audiences, and really start to figure out the right permutations. Look for those signs of life where an audience is connected to a hook, and then some ensuing content, and then use that as our in to really start to go expand. So that's a big mistake I see people make, is like, I tried the YouTube thing, I made the creative, that was supposed to be the YouTube ad that worked, and it's a little bit more of like a lazy assessment as opposed to Meta, where I think we're all like, we have to make Meta work. So let's go spend a lot of time, find the right creative partners to do so. I think that everybody needs to start thinking about YouTube in the exact same way.
Okay, and this next question dovetails with that perfectly, which is, how do you think about creative fatigue? You know, one of the biggest things I've seen, the rise of short form video has completely changed a lot of things. It's made our lives a lot harder. I think probably 3 years ago, I started likening it to like a train that runs on coal and we're just shoveling. It's like, when you think about, I want you to go like TikTok, it's like TikTok, Meta, YouTube, and television and or CTV. How are you thinking about creative burnout and fatigue? What are your expectations by channel?
Well, we shut down TikTok web ads. It just wasn't incremental for the business. So, but TikTok, yes, I believe it's like a very needy, hungry platform. Meta, I think we're doing 400 to 600 ads a month. But YouTube, I think we're doing 30 to 50 ads a month at a minimum right now. So it's been really fun to try to attack it in that way. And I think that from a fatigue perspective, what's cool about YouTube, and I'll toot the raindrop horn, even though I'm not paid to say so. But you know, when Jacques' team delivers assets to us, it's one anchor spot, but it's got like 50 unique ads within it, and that's what's been so cool, especially at Groons. You showed some of our old stuff. Unfortunately, that's the old branding, but that ad had so many permutations of cuts that we use for our platform, and anything else that Raindrops provided to us, we have squeezed so much juice out of those spots. So I think that the creative fatigue on YouTube's a bit of a misnomer, and you know, you can really have stuff have a long shelf life in there, but really be sure to cut things up. And the cooler part about YouTube is like, it feels a little old school Meta, like where you stack and lookalikes and interests and all this stuff. At least the experience we have with YouTube is like, we are being really intentional with audience selection and figuring out the right pieces of creative to cut by each of those audiences. So, you know, we find that we have a lot of life to squeeze out of things, and then a lot of different audiences to try to unlock with very small, sometimes nuances in the messaging and creative that pops up. But, you know, a vegan wellness person in market for that is very different from a guy that's interested in video games. So we're spending a lot of time trying to understand those nuances.
Okay, and I have one final question, and maybe I'll offer some audience participation here. And I realize I never gave away the Magic Mining Garoons after I promised that. So maybe as people ask questions,
It's a deadly combo, Rob. Huh?
Yeah. They'll be taking care of themselves. I think one of the big questions is like, and I watch brands go through this process where they're like, figuring out another channel beyond whatever channel, because sometimes they get from, I've seen brands go from zero. I have seen brands go from 0 to 100 million on almost every single channel. I've met people who are like, I did it literally only on Amazon. I did it only on TikTok Shops. I mean, let's say only 95% plus. Meta, YouTube, linear television. I've seen it all. when are you like flashing the red lights for not getting a secondary channel going for yourself is going to become a major inhibitor to the growth of the brand? Having worked with these 3 different brands, obviously Grunes is, in Grunes, I should have said, really, I don't know, should I call it you snacks? It's like you have 3 new brands you guys have launched. Bottom line is every single one of those, are trying in a different point in time, and it's like, when is it like starting to get critical? When is the blind, like the flashing lights, like you got to figure out a secondary channel? When are you feeling that?
What's fun about the Grunes experience, and hopefully everybody gets a chance to try, I think they're in the goodie bags, but we have launched these other brands. So I have the pleasure and curse of trying to figure out what to do with a brand at scale, like Grunes, or scaling. And then we've launched Nootropes and Mune and Juice and some of these other brands that are a little bit more in their infancy. So we're really trying to piece together our playbook of like when a channel needs to be introduced and at what time, what's the creative set that we need to go out and create to get these brands off the ground. So I'm very convinced that YouTube and Meta can get most brands to 100 million. I think like people diversify far too quickly. You need influencer and seeding and content to fuel those channels, but I think that those should be the main focuses for the majority of advertisers, and you can get pretty far with them. I think people are too slow to get YouTube into the mix, though. With Grunes, I think within 3 or 4 months of existence, Chad, I wasn't there at the time, but was starting to work with Raindrop and starting to put those ads out. What we're spending a lot of time doing right now, though, is trying to figure out what's the right combination of media that needs to be in market to increment volume. So, for example, like YouTube in isolation, like I don't really believe in MTA, but like Northbeam, cool, our team has it. YouTube looks terrible, right? We introduced a tool, House, I'm sure you guys all have incrementality tools or are starting to explore them. Like we started to see, oh, YouTube shows up a little bit better like this, but still on a D2C only basis. It was like not massively impactful. Amazon comes in the fold. Okay, cool. A lot of people are going off and purchasing on Amazon. Then over the last couple of weeks, we've been shipping in Target data, Amazon data, or Walmart data, Sam's Club data, and our retail partners, and suddenly like, oh my gosh, this YouTube impact is occurring. It is just on retail. So the really fun part about figuring out your media mix is like, depending on where you are selling, there are consumers for each of those sales outlets, and there are channels that increment sales for each of them. So we're trying to figure out the right combinations of channels, the right percentage combinations of channels, and then where those sales actually occur. So to me, like, the game is never ending. And now I've got all this like newfound excitement that's like, oh, if YouTube viewers are for the most part going and buying on retail, what does that mean we need to do from a creative perspective? Oh, should I stop actually optimizing for demand gen? Should I be actually trying to maximize impression load per user per month, cheapen my CPMs, and try to extend my reach and ensure that everybody's getting 2 or 3 exposures to Grunes all across the country? Maybe. So that's a journey that we're embarking on right now, is trying to figure out, like, in a world that's not pure conversion optimized, going to Shopify.
I love it, man. Woo! Just drinking in that knowledge over here. I would love to be able to at least take like, we'll call it like 2 to 3 questions from anyone out there, and I am going to incentivize it with a goodie bag for Connor here. And Trent will throw you. Why don't you come over here, Trent? He's got a throwable mic.
I was gonna hand.
Is that a Tony box? My daughter would love that.
Dude.
Okay. Anyone have a question out there for Mr. Connor? Yes, in the back. Are you gonna throw it? Throw it, and then someone will catch
throw it. It's your choice. You ready?
So my question is on Meta, right? When you start advertising, you have the stories, the reels, and then the feed all connected, right? So the stories and the reels basically tell you, they look for audiences that are connecting to the hook, the small video hooks, right? And then that feeds into their feed, the longer videos. So when it comes to YouTube and you're going to start on YouTube, does YouTube have a similar system where, this can happen? Or is it like you can only show longer videos and then, the prospecting happens only on the longer videos?
I've never actually thought about what I believe is an inverted relationship between the two. You're totally right, though, and it's interesting for YouTube. We definitely spend the most amount of time and energy trying to figure out long-form assets. Like, I remember figuring this out. I was at a company called Quibi in 2020, and we were going just toe-to-toe with Michael Bloomberg, spending as much money as possible on YouTube mastheads and stuff. And at the time, we were cutting so many ads, and like the stuff that was cutting through was longer form. It was like 50 seconds or more. We started to find like CPM arbitrage and started to think like, oh, is it because people are watching long form content on YouTube and nobody's spending on long form ads? Like, anyway, so since then we've been every brand I've at, we've been trying to cut long form ads, and then we try to extend the story through the shorter permutations. So I'll use Raindrop as a perfect example. Like everything that we do, we're scripting 5 concepts together right now. Everything is through this like really long form anchor. Right, like, and within that, again, is a bunch of different stories and a bunch of different permutations of message that might resonate with various consumers. Then when we work on the cut downs, everything will anchor off of that. So there's going to be this like driving sentiment that's going to be felt in that long form anchor, and then we're going to have little touches that reverberate out through all the rest of the placements on YouTube. We're spending a lot of time figuring out shorts right now, for example. So YouTube's inverted, long form, and then all of the extensions and additional touch points that exist throughout the rest of the YouTube ecosystem. That's how we're finding success. Even little things like crafting display ads and stuff to serve out across some of that shitty PMAX inventory to make sure that there's a little bit of that resonance against that kind of like design and messaging system we made for the anchor spot. Cool question.
God, I feel smarter already. Am I alone? Like, holy shit. I do. Oh, my God. We have time for one more question out there. And you do get prizes. Yes, in the back.
Sounds like you guys are making a ton of different variations of ads. I'm really curious about how you think about making those internally versus working with somebody externally. At what point of the stage do you consider working with someone like Raindrop? What are the pros and cons of each? And are you trying to do a little bit of both?
We try to be as scrappy as possible to get going. We seed product out, we get a bunch of stuff gathered up in archive, and we try to stitch together montages and things to be able to like create that social proof, you know, like everybody's talking about this brand feeling. And then, like I said, we want to find messages, value props, things about the product that are resonating with the consumer, and then go to the Raindrop team with a little bit more of an informed brief and view of who our consumer is. So instead of spending the money, you know, Raindrop's not cheap, Jock's not a cheap date, but it's a really fantastic output, but their output's only going to be as good as the inputs. And the more informed we are about our brand, the consumers resonating with them, we give them a brief that's like, hey, we actually, you know, Groons has so many different benefits to it. Plug. So the ability to tell Jock's team, like, hey, we want to go focus on these parts of Groons, and that's what's going to be resonating with the consumer, and everything extends off of that, makes those bigger investments more valuable. But for the most part, Groons, we have mostly an in-house team, but things like what Jock's team brings to the table, we don't really try to do that ourselves. It's just it's a rare air of talent that it takes to get that type of thing.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm the one that's supposed to break us for lunch. Duggan.
That's me.
Wonderful. Come on up, Duggan. And also, I just want to give a round of applause for Connor for joining us for today.
Guys.
I know he's slammed. And so thank you for being here. And I hope you guys have a chance to connect with him. Make sure you follow him on LinkedIn and everywhere else. He shares valuable content. Thank you.